The Great Hall of the Intergalactic University stretched far beyond what the human eye could fully comprehend. Towering crystalline pillars refracted shimmering light from floating orbs, casting waves of iridescence across the gathered spectators. Representatives from over 50 species occupied the viewing platforms, their forms ranging from towering insectoids to gelatinous entities pulsating with bioluminescent curiosity. The hum of multilingual conversations wove through the air, blending into an ambient murmur of anticipation. At the center of it all, standing on the elevated challenge dais, was Captain Rhea Nova. She kept her stance relaxed, arms folded, her expression impassive as she met the 6 unblinking eyes of Professor Zinther. The Vorten scholar loomed before her, draped in his traditional deep blue robes, embroidered with the shifting runes of his people. His elongated skull pulsed faintly as his secondary brainwaves oscillated, a sign of amusement in his species. "You understand the nature of this challenge, human?" Zinther's voice was smooth, condescending, each syllable measured with deliberate precision. "This is not some crude test of mere calculation. The Orvax puzzle is a construct of higher-dimensional logic, designed to test the limits of intellectual comprehension." Rhea tilted her head slightly. "And yet, it's been solved before." Zinther's lipless mouth curled into something akin to a smirk. "By Vortens, Salathians, and select Eldari. Species whose cognitive capabilities have been refined over millennia. Humanity has no such advantage. You are welcome to withdraw now and spare yourself the embarrassment." Rhea let out a slow breath, suppressing the urge to grin. "Arrogance. That's your flaw." Instead, she stepped forward. 1 hour, right?" Zinther's hand hovered over the activation console. "Indeed." Rhea rolled her shoulders. "I'll finish in 10 minutes." A hush fell over the crowd. Some chittered in amusement, others hummed in disbelief. A Zalathian delegate muttered something to his companion, both of them flashing their color-shifting throat sacs in what was undoubtedly laughter. Zinther blinked once. "Confidence without reason is ignorance, Captain Nova." She smiled. "Then let's get started." With a flick of his elongated fingers, Zinther activated the puzzle. A thrum vibrated through the dais as luminous symbols materialized in the air before Rhea. The Orvax puzzle wasn't a mere visual riddle. It was a living construct, shifting between dimensions, requiring not just problem-solving skills but an ability to think beyond linear perception. The symbols rearranged themselves constantly, morphing, dissolving, reappearing in fractal patterns that defied simple logic. The puzzle's core, a suspended dodecahedron, hovered midair, each of its faces adorned with swirling glyphs that flickered between states of reality. Every solution altered the puzzle's structure, changing the rules in real time. Rhea studied it for exactly 5 seconds. Then, she smirked. She reached forward and, instead of attempting to decipher the obvious patterns, she touched the core. Gasps rippled through the audience. "She is attempting direct interaction," a Zalathian murmured. "Foolish," an Eldari scholar scoffed. Zinther merely watched, his expression unreadable. Rhea's fingers met the surface of the dodecahedron, and immediately, a surge of resistance pushed back. The puzzle recognized her input. It was assessing her, adapting to her thought process. "Interesting," she murmured. The expected method, the one every previous competitor had used, was to analyze the shifting symbols and attempt to decode the logic behind their transformation. Rhea had no intention of following that path. The problem with the so-called superior intellects of the galaxy was that they overcomplicated things. Rhea wasn't the smartest human alive. She wasn't a quantum physicist or a savant in theoretical computation. What she was, however, was a strategist, a specialist in adaptive thinking, trained to find weaknesses in any given system. And right now, she saw the flaw. Instead of treating the puzzle as a purely intellectual challenge, she viewed it as an opponent. A dynamic system with rules meant to deceive. It wasn't about solving the puzzle's logic. It was about breaking it. "Captain Nova appears to be," one of the commentators began, but stopped as the dodecahedron flickered. "A shift." Rhea traced a single glyph with her fingertip, watching how the symbols in the surrounding space subtly reacted. The puzzle wasn't just responding to her, it was trying to anticipate her. It was designed for species that overanalyzed, that relied on millennia of knowledge to brute force a solution. The flaw? It had no defense against intuition. She pressed another symbol, one that made no immediate sense. The dodecahedron trembled. A small flicker of instability spread across its surface. Zinther's expression finally changed. Just a fraction. You are guessing? Rhea chuckled. Not guessing. Feeling. Zinther's secondary brainwaves flared in confusion. Feeling? Logic is absolute. Intuition is a primitive crutch for undeveloped minds. Maybe. Rhea's fingers danced across the surface, selecting glyphs that shouldn't have made sense, yet every touch destabilized the puzzle further. Or maybe you've all been looking at this the wrong way. More murmurs from the audience. The puzzle, once a seamless construct of fluid complexity, now rippled with inconsistencies. Zinther's eyes narrowed. He adjusted his stance, fingers hovering over a control panel embedded in his armrest. Rhea noticed. Thinking of changing the difficulty, she asked, amusement lacing her tone. Zinther did not respond, but his fingers twitched away from the controls. The academic code of honor was strict. Interference during a challenge would mean disqualification. Rhea returned her focus to the puzzle. The patterns were unraveling now, exposing the underlying framework of the construct. It wasn't meant to be solved through calculation. It was meant to test adaptability. A final touch. The puzzle fractured. Not violently, there was no explosion, no dramatic collapse. Instead, the dodecahedron simply stopped. The shifting symbols froze in place, then dissolved into streams of harmless data. The core, once a swirling complexity of logic, now hovered inert. The challenge was over. Silence. Then, a single phrase from the automated challenge system. Solution verified. Challenge complete. The great hall erupted into chaos. Gasps, exclamations, a cacophony of voices arguing in disbelief. Some species protested, claiming a trick. Others simply gaped at the deactivated puzzle, struggling to process what had just happened. Zinther did not move. Rhea stepped back, arms crossed. That was, what? 7 minutes? She glanced at the timer. Oh, wait. 6 minutes, 32 seconds. Damn. I was aiming for 10. Zinther finally exhaled. Impossible. Clearly not, Rhea countered. You just assumed I'd play by the same rules as everyone else. That was your mistake. The Vorten's 6 eyes fixed on her. There was no more amusement, no arrogance. Just cold analysis. You understood the puzzle's nature? I understood that intelligence isn't just about solving problems. It's about knowing which problems actually matter. She smiled. And sometimes, the smartest move isn't the one that makes the most sense, it's the one that works. For the first time, Zinther had no response. Rhea turned to the gathered audience. So, does humanity get some credit now, or do I need to beat you all at chess too? The roar of reactions continued. But Rhea had already won. The uproar in the great hall showed no signs of subsiding. Waves of heated debates, frantic gestures, and incredulous exclamations filled the massive chamber. Among the many alien species in attendance, reactions ranged from admiration to outright denial. Captain Rhea Nova remained at the center of it all, her arms crossed, weight shifted onto one leg, a calm smirk playing on her lips. She had expected skepticism. She had expected outrage. What she had not expected was the sheer level of chaos that erupted the moment she solved the Orvax puzzle, not just quickly, but in a way that defied conventional understanding. Zinther stood motionless, his tall, willowy frame betraying no visible emotion. But Rhea could tell. The Vorten scholar was rattled. His 6 eyes, which normally moved in synchronized precision, flickered erratically between her and the inert puzzle core. This result, he said finally, voice slow and deliberate, is irregular. You're telling me, Rhea said with a shrug. A deep chime resonated from above, a synthesized tone signaling official inquiry. From the upper levels of the Great Hall, a group of figures stepped forward, their robes bearing the sigils of the High Curia of academic integrity. One of them, a towering elderly with silver-hued skin and elongated, crystalline horns, descended onto the central platform. The audience hushed as she spread her translucent wings, a gesture of authority. Captain Rhianova, she intoned, her voice layered with an eerie resonance. You have completed the Orvax puzzle in an unprecedented time frame. This raises questions. Rhea inclined her head slightly. Ask away. Murmurs rippled through the crowd at her casual tone, but the elderly scholar remained unreadable. Did you use any external assistance? Rhea lifted an eyebrow. You're asking if I cheated? The elderly didn't blink. Clarify your methodology. Rhea exhaled. Fine. The Orvax puzzle isn't just a test of intelligence, it's a test of how species approach intelligence. Everyone else overanalyzed it. I approached it like a tactical problem, not a mathematical one. I figured out its weakness and used it against itself. The elderly's wings twitched slightly. Explain. Rhea gestured toward the inactive puzzle core. The challenge isn't just about finding a solution, it's about understanding how the puzzle reacts to problem-solving attempts. It wasn't testing knowledge, it was testing approach. The real trick wasn't solving it in the way it expected, but realizing it was designed to anticipate solutions. I broke the feedback loop by engaging with it instinctively, rather than logically. Silence followed. Then, Zinther spoke. Absurd. His tone was sharp now, clipped. Intuition is unreliable. Randomized input should not yield a complete solution. Rhea gave him a knowing look. Unless the system itself is biased towards certain thinking patterns. The puzzle assumed I'd follow conventional problem-solving structures. The moment I didn't, it didn't know how to respond. The elderly scholar exchanged glances with her colleagues. Your claim, if verified, would challenge established understanding of cognitive theory across multiple civilizations. Rhea shrugged. Not my problem. You asked for a solution. I gave you one. A different voice spoke now, deep, guttural, carrying the weight of authority. And what should we make of this? Rhea turned. A Zalathian delegate, a hulking, quadrupedal creature covered in thick, scale-like plating, stepped forward. Unlike the academics, his tone was not one of inquiry, but suspicion. This human, he rumbled, his throat sacs pulsing a dark shade of crimson, has demonstrated an anomaly. Either she possesses an undocumented ability, or she has manipulated the test. Both possibilities warrant investigation. Rhea resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Oh, come on. What's so hard to believe? I just outplayed the system. The Zalathian snorted. Then replicated. A murmur swept through the chamber. Rhea's smirk faltered slightly. Replicate, she echoed. Yes, the Zalathian said. If your method is valid, then you should be able to complete another Orvax puzzle, one generated in real time, beyond any potential foreknowledge. Rhea glanced at Zinther. The Vorten scholar's expression had shifted, his initial disdain replaced by something more dangerous, curiosity. She sighed. Figures. A new console was summoned from the floor, its surface flickering as a fresh puzzle initialized. Unlike the previous version, this one had no pre-existing structure. It was forming in real time, shifting chaotically as algorithms worked to ensure no pattern could be predicted. Begin, the elderly scholar announced. Rhea took a deep breath. This is different. The last puzzle had a structure she could manipulate. This one was a living system designed specifically to counter her advantage. For the first time, uncertainty settled in. She placed a hand on the console. The puzzle core pulsed, responding instantly to her input. It's adapting faster. Instead of waiting for her to select symbols, it was already shifting preemptively, cycling through variables at an accelerated rate. Rhea focused. Think. Think like a soldier, not a scientist. She didn't need to solve the puzzle. She needed to outmaneuver it. She pressed a symbol. A reaction, a ripple of instability, but the system corrected itself faster this time. Slower, someone murmured. She ignored them. Adjusted. Changed her approach. Instead of attacking the problem head-on, she hesitated, waiting for the puzzle to make its move. Let it think it has control. A pattern emerged. The puzzle wasn't just reacting, it was predicting. And that was its weakness. Rhea exhaled. Then, instead of trying to beat it at its own game, she did something unexpected. She did nothing. She lifted her hand, stepping back. The puzzle hesitated. A brief, almost imperceptible lag. Then she struck, selecting a series of symbols in rapid succession, targeting the moments when the system was between calculations. The puzzle glitched. A flicker. A stutter. A pulse of distorted energy rippled through the core. Then, solution verified. Challenge complete. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Rhea blew out a slow breath. That was harder. The Zalathian delegate's throat sacs flared wildly. This is. The elderly scholar raised a hand. It is confirmation. She turned toward Rhea, her expression unreadable. Your methodology was not a fluke. Your process, however unorthodox, is replicable. This marks a significant moment in intergalactic academia. Zinter's gaze was fixed on the puzzle core, his mind clearly racing. Rhea could see it, the way his primary and secondary brains were working in tandem, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Rhea clapped her hands together. So, do I get a diploma or something? That, finally, broke the tension. Laughter, scattered at first, then spreading through the chamber. The elderly allowed the faintest hint of a smile. Humanity, it seems, has earned more than recognition today. Rhea smirked. Good. Because I'm just getting started. The chamber still buzzed with disbelief, though now it carried an undercurrent of something new, respect. The assembled species, some of the most advanced intellects in the known galaxy, had witnessed something they couldn't explain, something that defied their expectations. Captain Rhianova had done more than solve the Orvax puzzle, she had broken the very idea of how it was supposed to be solved. Yet, not everyone was pleased. Zinter's expression remained unreadable, but his secondary brainwaves pulsed erratically, an undeniable sign of frustration among Vortons. The Zalathian delegate still loomed nearby, his throat sacs shifting through an array of colors that suggested barely restrained skepticism. Even the elderly scholar, who had acknowledged Rhea's success, studied her with a penetrating gaze, as if seeing her in a new light. Rhea stretched her arms. All right, so, what now? Do I get a medal? A scholarship? Maybe a nice fruit basket? Zinter's eyes narrowed. You fail to grasp the magnitude of what has just occurred, human. Rhea let out a small chuckle. No, I get it. You all thought your test was unbeatable, and I flipped the board instead of playing by your rules. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? A murmur ran through the gathered crowd. The elderly stepped forward, wings folding against her back. We will need to verify the implications of your success. If your method is reproducible, it suggests that certain assumptions about cognition, problem-solving, and intelligence itself have been fundamentally flawed. The Zalathian delegate rumbled in discontent. Or it suggests that the human is an outlier. A statistical anomaly. Rhea smirked. You really don't like losing, huh? His plates shifted, a sign of irritation. You have not won anything. You have disrupted a carefully measured system. Same thing, Rhea quipped. The elderly ignored the tension and turned to her peers. The question remains, how do we proceed? Zinther spoke before anyone else could. There is one obvious course of action. His gaze locked onto Rhea. A final test. Rhea sighed. Of course there is. This time, Zinther continued, it will not be an abstract puzzle. No theoretical construct, no manipulated sequence of logic. This will be a real-world application of your claimed abilities. Rhea rolled her shoulders. Define real-world. The Vortin's 6 eyes gleamed. A challenge of strategy. One where the outcome is not determined by predetermined rules, but by your ability to adapt in a live, competitive setting. The Elderly inclined her head. You mean the Tactician's Gauntlet? A ripple of approval spread through the gathered scholars. Even the Zalathian grunted in reluctant acknowledgement. Rhea arched a brow. I feel like I should be concerned by the way you all just reacted. Zinther ignored her. The Tactician's Gauntlet is an elite test, one that evaluates an individual's ability to command, strategize, and react in a dynamically shifting conflict scenario. It is used to determine the capabilities of high-ranking military minds across the known galaxy. No human has ever participated. Let me guess, Rhea said, no human has ever been allowed to participate. The Zalathian let out a low rumble. Humans were considered unqualified for such a test. Rhea laughed. And yet here we are. The Elderly raised a hand. The challenge must be accepted voluntarily. Her silver eyes settled on Rhea. There is no requirement for you to continue proving yourself. You have already done what no other human has accomplished. You may leave with your recognition intact. Rhea glanced at the gathered scholars, at the silent but watchful audience. She could walk away right now, take the victory and the respect she'd earned. But something about Zinther's expression, the way the Zalathian's muscles tensed, told her they wanted her to decline. They wanted her to back down. And that wasn't going to happen. Fine, Rhea said, cracking her knuckles. Let's do it. The Tactician's Gauntlet. The transition from the Great Hall to the Gauntlet Chamber was nearly seamless. The moment Rhea agreed, she was escorted through a series of arching corridors, past towering data spires and shimmering neural interfaces. The chamber itself was vast, its walls lined with holographic projectors. At the center of the room, an enormous display flickered to life, showcasing a simulated battlefield, one that would adapt and evolve in response to the participants' decisions. Standing opposite Rhea was Zinther. The Vortin's posture was composed, but his secondary brainwaves pulsed in a steady rhythm, focused calculation. He was taking this seriously. Rhea was given a quick overview. The rules were straightforward. Both participants would control opposing forces in a simulated war scenario. The battlefield would shift based on their strategies. The first to either neutralize their opponent's command structure or force them into surrender would be declared the winner. No tricks. No time limits. Just pure, unfiltered tactical warfare. Ready? The Elderly overseer asked. Rhea smirked. Always. The simulation launched. Instantly, a vast planetary war zone stretched across the screen. Rhea's forces were displayed in blue, Zinther's in red. She had infantry, armored divisions, orbital support. He had the same. The battlefield itself was an ever-changing mix of terrain, urban centers, rolling plains, dense forests, and mountainous choke points. Zinther moved first. His forces spread with mathematical efficiency, securing key supply routes, fortifying defensive positions. Every maneuver was calculated, every deployment a precise application of tactical theory. Rhea watched. Studied. And then she did what she always did. She broke the pattern. Instead of fortifying, instead of engaging Zinther's forces head-on, she disrupted. She sent out small strike teams to harass his supply lines, destabilizing his formations before they could take root. Zinther adjusted, fast, shifting his strategy to counter her aggression. Rhea adapted. He responded. The simulation evolved, becoming faster, more chaotic. The scholars watching from the observation deck murmured in amazement. No human should have been able to keep pace with a Vorten strategist of Zinther's caliber. But Rhea wasn't playing like a Vorten. She played like a human. She was unpredictable, aggressive in ways that defied standard logic. Where Zinther optimized, she improvised. Where he followed probability, she followed instinct. And then, a breakthrough. Rhea's forces surged forward in a feint, drawing Zinther into a battle he thought he could control. But she had anticipated his reaction. It was a trap. Her forces collapsed around his exposed command structure. Zinther saw it a second too late. The simulation froze. A single notification flashed across the display. Victory, Captain Rhea Nova. Silence. Then, thunderous applause. Zinther exhaled slowly, his 6 eyes narrowing in something that looked like reluctant admiration. You are formidable. Rhea grinned. Yeah, I get that a lot. The elderly scholar approached, her wings flaring slightly. It would seem that humanity's place in the intellectual hierarchy is no longer in question. The Zalathian delegate let out a deep sigh. An adjustment of assumptions will be required. Rhea stretched. So, do I finally get that fruit basket? The elderly chuckled. Captain Nova, I believe you have earned far more than that. Rhea smirked. Good. Because I'm just getting started.